This is about optional arguments, which is something you might not be used to from the other languages. I don't use them a lot myself, to be honest, so I have to brush up on it. But I will say this is something you will see more often, probably in Python. In Python, this kind of thing happens more often for whatever reason. But I'll just give you a simple example here. I'll let you guys review in the book some other examples. But the way it works, first of all, let's start at the beginning. The way it works, to make an argument optional, all you do is set a default value to it. So kind of the way to read this is that if an argument is not sent for this particular parameter number of games, let's set it to as if it were 1,000. So that's the default value. If the person calling this method leaves out the argument and it's just empty parentheses, then you set it to 1,000. You could, by the way, you could have other arguments that are not optional before it, but as soon as you have an optional one, you want to make everything else after that optional. I say arguments again, like I said, interchangeable, but parameters, technically speaking. So if you have optional parameters, put all of them at the end. Don't mix and match. And that helps with the method signature, which that's something else we probably should review at some point. But making sure you know what overloading is and stuff. I don't think you have overloading loading in this chapter though, so we'll save that. But anyway, so that's how you set it up. You just set it up with gets default value, and then the way you use it, I just cooked up a real quick example here. For the playcraft. I can't believe what this is turning into. This simple example with a die originally turned into a big thing, but it could probably be done a lot better. So keep in mind, this is just an example of how these things work. Don't worry so much about how the craps game works. But anyway, so this is kind of a review of try-parse. I think I did a video on it, but just another example to reinforce it. So in this case, I'm going to use N32 try-parse just to confirm that this is an int before I choose which way I call it. So what this is saying is that if you parse the text property of the text box, this one right here, if you parse it and you get an integer, then call with that integer that you get. So if it does work out, then it will put into this variable I declare number of games, it will put in the number of games from the text box into it. Otherwise, it won't be a number in there because it's not a number, and you'll get false. If this is a number, it'll put that integer. It'll put the integer in here, and it'll set this to true. Otherwise, it won't put an integer in there, and it'll set this to false. And then I can just do a if else on that. So I'll say if it is true that it is an integer, then I call it with that integer. Otherwise, I just call it with an empty amount. So the idea is if the person leaves it blank, which we'll demonstrate, if the person leaves this blank, we're just going to assume they want 1,000, and it'll do 1,000. Otherwise, if the person puts in an actual number like 12, it'll do that instead. So that's what that kind of flexibility gives to you. Otherwise, you would have to like overload and do some. It saves you a bit of typing and structure. So that's really all to say. All I want to say about optional arguments. I'll cook up another example with named arguments in the next video.